Most meetings work really well, but sometimes they go wrong. So in this video, I want to give you some ideas for what you can do when your meeting goes wrong. The first thing I say is trust the process, because sometimes meetings go through a bumpy patch, but if you've designed the meeting carefully and you've used an appropriate process, it may just be that that bumpy patch is a necessary part of the cycle of that meeting, and if you work through the process and follow it, things will resolve themselves during the meeting and it'll work out fine. But the reality is, sometimes a set of behaviours occur or a discussion evolves in a certain way and you feel like you've lost control of the meeting and you're not sure how to get it back. And that's the subject of this video. The first thing I'd say is when things start to go south, keep calm. Stay centred. Sit upright, breathe deeply, and use the SCOPE process. SCOPE stands for stop, pause, take a mental step back, and then clarify what's going on. Think through what you're observing. Perhaps ask some questions of the group. Call out the disruption. Say, things aren't going well. What do we think's happening? What's the issue? Once you've clarified, take a moment to think through the options that you have for how you can handle it. And we'll look at some of those options in a moment. Determine which option or combination of options is most likely to give you back control of the meeting and get it on track to meet worthwhile outcomes, and then proceed. Having proceeded, though, stay alert for how things are going. Evaluate the strategy you've put into place. While it's working, stick with it. But if it's not working, stop. Clarify what's going on now, think through some new options, and proceed again and evaluate. The SCOPE process is my number one process for professionals, managers and leaders to have in their back pocket because it works in so many situations. And here, it's ideal. One of the simplest interventions you can make is to stop the meeting and take a few moments to restate the meeting's objectives, the outcomes you hope to achieve, why we're here, and to summarise where we are. Just doing that can refocus people so that then when you move on and say, what we're going to do next is, they're ready. The next possibility is that actually what the meeting has done is got confused by multiple topics that it's trying to resolve at the same time. So focus the meeting on one topic. Physically park the other topics, perhaps make a note of them on a board, or state that here's all the topics that we seem to be working on. Let's put these ones to one side. Let's focus on this one topic. Choose the topic that you think will give you the best chance of getting the meeting back on track, perhaps the root topic or perhaps something simple that the meeting can focus on and make progress on. And sometimes you just need a new voice, so invite someone to speak who hasn't contributed much or certainly hasn't said anything recently. And if you need to make a bigger physical kind of break to the meeting, call a pause and get people to move around. In fact, why not move the seats? Change everybody's perspective on the meeting. Ask people to take a new seat in a different place. Perhaps in the break, lay out some place settings. It is often not going to be possible or appropriate to do this, but one possibility is to physically move people while you're meeting. Actually take people out of the meeting room, perhaps out into some fresh air. That can have a hugely transformative effect. If the meeting has got quite disruptive, a great strategy is to ask for 2 minutes silence for people to think about where we are and what we've learned. If that feels too awkward, a simpler way to do it that works in many situations that I've found is to ask people to take 2 minutes to quietly jot down their thoughts about what we've learned so far, where we are, and what the important questions are. enforce quiet. Don't require people to write something down. If they don't, they don't. But by getting people to write things down and then asking people to make contributions about what they've written, it kind of forces the emotions backwards to allow the thoughts to come forwards. If you do break the meeting, either by physically stopping the meeting or by just asking for that silence, you have an opportunity when you restart the meeting, before you do anything else, to reassert the ground rules, or if you don't have any ground rules, to say, look, the meeting hasn't been going well. Let's just think about some rules of the road that we might want to set ourselves, some behavioural guidelines. Another thing you can do at this stage is to say, look, this issue is very contentious. Let's put it to one side and move on and come back to it towards the end of the meeting, or even at another meeting. One thing you might want to do is to have a quiet word, and it's the obvious thing to do is to have a quiet word with the disruptive people. It may not be that there are any particular people who are being disruptive. The meeting just isn't working. In this case, I'd have a quiet word with one or two key allies, people you think have some real gravitas, some real influence on the meeting, a strong and pertinent point of view, or simply people you trust. Have a quiet word with them and ask for their thoughts about how best as a group you can move forward and what you as the chair or facilitator can do to make that happen. Before we get to the final and what I think is the most powerful but ultimately nuclear option, I want to suggest that there is something you can do which is very difficult for you but enormously powerful. And that's to call for some quiet and then apologise. Apologise to the meeting, to the people at the meeting, for what has happened. You may think it's not your fault, they may think it's not your fault, but let's face it, you're in the chair. So the conduct of the meeting is your responsibility, and if it hasn't worked, take responsibility. Look to the meeting and say, look, I'm sorry, the meeting isn't working, and at the moment I need to apologise for that. And then ask the group for their help. Ask them what they think we ought to be doing in order to move the meeting forward in a positive way. Now, this does cede control and you can lose face. But that humility, that act of contrition and that openness to help can make people see that they've been behaving badly as well. It's not entirely your fault, and you may well get some really good suggestions as to what to do next. But if all of this fails, sometimes the only thing left to you is to adjourn the meeting. To say to the group, look, this meeting isn't working. I need to think about why not, to think about what we can do about it. So let's break the meeting now and let's adjourn completely. And I'll get back in touch and invite you to another meeting at another time. So there we have a wide range of different strategies you can handle for when meetings start to go wrong. Ideally, you'll pick up problems early and you'll be able to deal with them with a subtle intervention. If they go seriously wrong, you'll need something more powerful. But I've given you lots of different options, and because of that, I hope you'll feel confident to go into your next meeting, knowing that if it does start to get out of control, you will have the strategies to handle it. Please give us a thumbs up if you like this video. There's loads more great management courses content to come, so please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any of it. I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video, and in the meantime, keep learning.